as the two nations trade accusations and expel one other's diplomats over the murder of a Sikh separatist leader. Canada-Indian ties have reached their lowest ebb in years. Although it's unclear if it would cause a long-lasting gap between the two American allies, Western nations hoping to court New Delhi as a counterbalance to China and secure India's support for the Ukraine war find themselves in an unpleasant position. When he visited India with his family for a week 5 years ago, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made headlines in India for his enthusiastic embrace of the culture. He wore a number of vibrant, dazzling traditional Indian clothes, paid visits to landmarks, and even got Prime Minister Narendra Modi's famous bear hug, which was a hint that things were looking up between them. When Trudeau announced on Monday that his government is looking into credible allegations that India may have been involved in the murder of a Canadian Sikh independence activist in British Columbia in June, it looked as though those days had long since passed. On Tuesday, India rejected that as absurd and charged Canadian diplomats with meddling in internal matters. The relationship has long been strained by New Delhi's worries over Sikh separatist organizations in Canada, but the two have maintained close defense and commercial connections and have similar strategic concerns about China's aspirations for the world. At the G20 summit that India hosted earlier this month, there were indications of a diplomatic breach. According to local media accounts, Trudeau was dealt a blow when he only had time for a quick pull-aside discussion with Modi rather than a sit-down bilateral encounter, which is why he skipped the official dinner provided for the G20 leaders. According to a statement issued at the time by India, Modi expressed worries that the Canadian government was lax in its treatment of Sikh separatists. When Trudeau's plane broke down, delaying his departure from New Delhi by around 36 hours, his tour came to an unpleasant end. On Monday, Trudeau provided a plausible explanation for the unease, saying he had discussed Canada's concerns about an assassination with the Indian Prime Leader at the conference. Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a 45-year-old Sikh leader who was murdered by masked gunmen in Surrey, British Columbia, has not yet been linked to India, according to information presented by Canada. However, India has long accused Canada of granting unfettered access to Sikh separatists, notably Nijjar, who served as the leader of the movement's remnants to establish an independent Sikh nation known as Khalistan. The Sikh separatist movement's active insurgency ceased decades ago, but the Modi administration has warned that it is trying to mount a resurgence and has urged nations like Canada, whose Sikhs make up more than 2% of the population, to do more to put a stop to it. India summoned Canada's top diplomat in June over a parade float that celebrated the killing of Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at the height of the Sikh rebellion in a small Canadian town. It did the same in late 2020 to voice its displeasure after Trudeau made understanding remarks on protests by farmers from Punjab, where Sikhs are the majority. Relationships between the two countries have never been dominated by the issue, but some experts believe that may change. The Wilson Center's South Asia Institute director, Michael Kugelman, predicted that despite the fact that neither party wants their relationships to break down, they're going to have trouble finding off-ramps after events of the last few days, he said. The recent suspension of negotiations on a new trade agreement between Canada and India as a result of the tensions is evidence that their relationship isn't as resilient and foolproof as many would like it to be, remarked Kugelman. The two nations are only tiny trading partners, but supporters had maintained that a trade agreement might increase GDP and employment for both. According to Kugelman, the ugly claims could harm Modi's rising soft power in the West, but morality and ideals don't often govern international politics. We won't see the Western democracies attempt to exclude India from their strategic considerations, particularly when it comes to containing China. He continued, the strategic convergences are too strong. Allies, including the United States and the United Kingdom, have so far voiced concern about the murder but have refrained from commenting on India's potential involvement. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong described the allegations coming out of Canada as concerning, adding that Canberra was keeping an eye on the situation and had brought it up with India. According to senior defense analyst Derek Grossman of the R&D Corporation, India may be able to wait out the situation. India's best friend is time, he declared, alluding to the 2018 murder of a Saudi journalist based in the U.S. in Istanbul. If Saudi Arabia's experience following its murder of Jamal Khashoggi is any guide, he remarked, the likelihood that both sides and others will wish to move on increases the longer arguments about the incident drag on. According to some Indian academics, Modi's combative response to the accusations is consistent with his strategy of exaggerating separatist concerns in order to strengthen his Hindu nationalist support. Because of the way this government has held its foreign policy hostage to domestic politics, Sushant Singh, a senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research in India, described the situation as unprecedented but not entirely unexpected. India has been portrayed by Modi as a rising global force able to balance its ties with the West and Russia on the one hand, and developing nations on the other. The incident, according to Singh, will put India under pressure, and it will have to devote a lot of energy to contain that fallout. Many Indian news websites and television stations carried headlines like "India trashes Canada's big charge," or mentioned India's savage reply to Canada. Users on social media attacked Trudeau for not taking India's fears about separatism seriously. Some Indian critics have also expressed skepticism regarding the charges, claiming that Trudeau failed to provide concrete proof and indicated that he was attempting to win political points by pandering to Sikh populations. However, Canada is more relevant to many other Indians, especially students, as an alluring abroad location. Nearly 300,000 Indian students were enrolled in higher education in 2022. A 21-year-old student in New Delhi named Prabjit Singh expressed his hope that the tense relations wouldn't have an impact on the hopes and careers of young Indians like him. Many Indians travel to Canada for employment and studies. I want to do the same for a brighter future. I sincerely hope that there be peace between the two nations, he remarked.